Hello, and thank you for joining us for the TAA webinar, How do Publishers Evaluate Book Proposals and Query Letters, presented by John Bond. John is a publishing consultant at River Winds Consulting. He works with individuals on publishing and writing projects. In his career, he has directed the publishing of over 500 book titles and 20,000 journal articles. He is the host of the YouTube channel Publishing Defined. Hello, John. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you to Kim and all the people at TAA that make these educational opportunities possible. I appreciate their efforts, and I appreciate all of you taking time today to watch and listen in on my thoughts on how publishers evaluate book proposals and query letters. As Kim said, there's going to be plenty of time for questions at the end. I hope you'll share your experiences and ask your questions, however advanced or rudimentary they are. Plus, a PDF of this will be available afterwards. So I encourage you to really listen and absorb as opposed to write down some of the things that you'll be seeing on the screen. I'm proud to be part of the TAA 2021 webinar series. I'm a big advocate of TAA and have spoken at their convention for the last few years. I encourage everybody to be a member, but most of all, to take advantage of the many resources and educational opportunities they have on their website. For such an inexpensive rate, there's a tremendous amount of education that comes with the association, so please be a member. Here's who I am. I'm a publishing consultant. Kim talked a little bit about me. These are the ways you can find out about me or contact me, and this slide will be at the end. So our agenda for today is, as expected, I'm going to start out with what is a book proposal and query to make sure we're all talking the same language. Who at the publisher reviews the book proposal? What are publishers looking for? Who else at the publisher, after there's some interest, might look at your material and review it? How do they evaluate an idea, an author, and the market? What are the best practices in creating a book proposal? And what are the red flags to avoid? And as I've mentioned, there'll be plenty of time for questions and talking about your experience at the end. Now let's just dive in. The assumption that I have for today's talk is we're discussing nonfiction, more specifically textbooks or an academic work. Fiction and other areas live by different rules. If you're interested in knowing more about these, fiction, memoir, poetry, other things, you can contact me offline, but ours is really focused today on textbook and academics. I'm assuming that the author or the editor of the work is creating the book proposal and query. I mean, there are instances where that may not be true, so I'm just assuming that they're doing that. That the materials are being submitted to the publisher directly by the author and not via an agent, which is a different approach. And once again, if you have interest in that, you can contact me offline. The author will develop the list of potential publishers for submission. So they're my assumptions for today. Let's start out with, what is a book proposal? A book proposal is an industry standard document that details the book idea for a publisher to review and to consider, and whether they wish to sign it and add it to their publishing line. It's a widely accepted way for authors to communicate their idea or ideas or project in detail. In many instances, the author may get a publisher to sign a project without actually having ever written the book. They might only have written a sample chapter or chapters. There might be a draft of the manuscript. And in some instances, some authors prefer to write the entire book before seeking a publisher. There is no one exact format for a book proposal, but most publishers and authors agree on the key elements that comprise it. Sample chapters aside, a book proposal might run from as little as 5 pages in some rare instances to maybe up to 30 pages, once again, sample chapters aside. On average, I would say for textbooks, in many fields, it might be 15 or 20 pages. So let's look at the parts of the book proposal. The beginning part is the overview of the entire project. It basically summarizes much of the proposal, and it starts with the USP, or unique selling proposition. You'll hear this term from me again. This is what makes your product or your project different from everything else that's out there. And you really need to be able to summarize your project in a very concise fashion and make it appealing, because the publisher will have to be doing the same thing to the potential customers or readers. Next comes a project summary, which is a elongated summary of the entire content of the book or textbook. This really gives an overview of the materials that you'll be covering. Next is project specifications and the status of it. Project specifications might be, I'm anticipating a 500-page manuscript with 24 illustrations, and that might convert into a 250-page paperback book that I envision, black and white inside with an associated website, or whatever your vision of the final product is. The status might mean I've written a couple chapters, I have the other chapters outlined, and once you give me the go-ahead, it's going to take me about a year to write the book. Another part of the proposal is the table of contents, or an expanded table of contents, which really highlights the sections of each chapter, and a chapter summary. This becomes very valuable for the publisher in determining how deep you're going to go into each area in the book. Next is competing and/or comparable titles. This is very important for you to know which in-print books are out there in this field that compete against your project or are comparable to your project. Each one will have some commentary by you as to how your project will be different and hopefully more valuable or better than those other titles. Next is about you, the author. This is no time for humility. You really need to feel and embrace being the expert you are and tooting your own horn. Not in a grandiose way, but you really need to explain that you are the person to write the book. Next is to talk about the market. So, for instance, is it going to be an undergraduate book in biology, or is it going to be for an upper class in a law school? And talk a little bit about the market and what's been happening with that market. Next is the author promotional platform. Some of you that have heard me speak before have probably heard that term, but one of the secrets, or hopefully not a secret to you, of publishing is the author is responsible for being a partner in the marketing and promotion of the book. And you need to be able to give concrete information as to how you'll be doing that in a genuine and detailed way. And then, of course, those sample chapters I mentioned. So many of these items all come together to be a book proposal, but what you're going to want to do is look at the publisher's website and see what each publisher is asking for. And sometimes they ask for something that's different than on this list or presented in a different way. Don't just create a book proposal and then randomly send it to publishers without knowing what they're asking for. Follow what the publisher asks for. So what is a query? A query letter and cover letter are probably similar. And remember, it's electronic. It's not an actual letter. Think of it as a way to introduce yourself to the publishers. This might be the only item they ever read because they are busy and they know what works for them pretty quickly. Make it count. Have this be the most valuable one page that you've written in regard to this topic or this content, just in case they don't make it to the book proposal. The query, in essence, in my mind, becomes a boiled down version of the book proposal. And the book proposal, in essence, is a boiled down version of the book. Make it tight, engaging, and readable. From my point of view, the parts are, that first paragraph is a hook or your unique selling proposition to really engage the reader, the publisher. Next is a summary of the project, including the title, the genre, and the market. Next will be your brief bio, Remember, don't be shy. And then you'll be including any unique marketing approaches by you that may catch the publisher's attention. Wrap it up and offer to send more, such as the whole manuscript or additional chapters, or to talk to them. And all of this should be done, in my mind, 4 to 5 type paragraphs. Might it be a little longer? Yes. Might it be twice that? I would suggest not. And when you have one written, share it with your colleagues and proofread it and proofread the book proposal and query very closely, and then proofread it again. So who initially reviews the book proposal and query letters? Reminder to spend way too much time researching the publishers to send your book proposal to, and then spend too much time researching those publishers as to who to send it to again. Can't spend too much time here. Find an exact person if possible, and not a general email box and form. Try to avoid sending it to submissions@largepublisher.com. I've had best luck with searching LinkedIn or similar places to find the person that's the acquisitions editor or was the acquisitions editor in your particular field or area at a publisher. This is important. Spend time doing this and try to find that person. If you have to send it to the general box, so be it. Sorry, but the industry suggests you do this only one publisher at a time, which I know sometimes authors frown at. I can understand because of speed, but this is the generally accepted practice. The book proposal is usually received by the acquisitions editor, who is the person in charge of business development. This is the person that literally acquires new books or works for the publisher, and they're charged with developing these new projects and authors. At larger publishers, your project may be screened by a lower level editorial person for compliance. So if you did not follow who the publisher was or follow the book proposal format, they may reject you before even getting to the acquisitions editor because you are not shooting for what they're asking for. In smaller companies, there might not be an acquisitions editor, and the people in upper management may be doing the product acquisition. So who else might see your material? Most publishers use their own market knowledge to evaluate an idea. Anyone that's worth its salt will be experts in their field and be able to tell preliminarily what works for them and what doesn't. Later on, if the project has interest, the people that might review it further are not only the acquisitions editor, but a developmental editor, which helps develop the material, people in marketing, sales, production, and as I said in upper management. All get to weigh in. Usually no one group has a say of yes or no on a project. Well, I guess upper management might have a say of no, but they all come together to form a piece of the puzzle of their decision whether to move forward. Many publishers, specifically in technical areas, will use, as you know, peer reviewers or outside experts to weigh in on your book proposal. The reviewers will not have the final say, but will also be one more important piece of their puzzle. The reviewers may look at just the idea as a single sentence that the publisher may send along. They may look at a one-page summary of the entire project that the publisher puts together, or they may review your whole package. They will be invisible and blind to you, but specifically in technical areas, guaranteed they'll probably show it to somebody else. Side note, at this point, when I talk about the peer reviewers reviewing your book proposal, here's the top questions I'm asked. Oh no, somebody will steal my idea, but the competitors might see what I intend to do. Should I copyright my material or title? Should I get my publisher and the reviewers to sign an NDA, which means non-disclosure agreement? From my point of view, in my experience, have no fear. In my 30-plus years experience, I have no firsthand knowledge of any of these things being true at any medium or full-size publisher, or any publisher of any repute. Why would they want to steal your idea when they've got a bird in the hand versus trying to find somebody else? Your competitors will eventually know what you're doing. You're going to need to try to find contributing authors, or there's going to be preliminary marketing on your book. Copywriting your material or the title, that mailing it to yourself or getting an actual copyright, in my mind, is an old-fashioned idea. Once you can prove your material was created electronically, simply by date stamps, copyright exists for your proof. And should you get your publisher and reviewers to sign an NDA? When I was a publisher, and I know my reviewers, I never would have signed any NDA for a preliminary idea for a field that I was publishing in. And I certainly wouldn't ask my reviewers to. I'd just say pass. So in my mind, these are not things to worry about. So what are publishers looking for? At the end of the day, most publishers are looking for a project that will make them money. Of course, there are exceptions with associations or societies or passion projects, but they're looking for ones that will generate revenue. You need to think like a publisher when you're creating the book proposal and speak their language. They are interested in something that's unique, something that's marketable, something that can be simply explained, something that's clearly different from those competitive and comparable titles that we talked about, something that's written by a leader or leaders or a thought leader in a field. They're looking for an author who will be a true promotional or marketing partner on a book and not give tacit approval to it. They're looking for low maintenance authors. I'm here to tell you, on the scale of the squeaky wheel gets the oil, all the way up to you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I'm a fan with the more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. For this reason, nobody wants to be the author or the person that every time an email arrives in their inbox or the call shows up on their cell phone, that the person groans or thinks that they've got something else to do. Low maintenance authors, I'm not saying to be a doormat, but low maintenance authors help you get published. So try to think like them and think what they need in certain instances. And the publishers are looking for somebody that will deliver and respond. Also, don't be one of those authors that disappears for 2 weeks or a month and doesn't answer emails or phone calls. If you say you're going to deliver at a certain point, deliver or have an honest conversation about why you're behind. So how do publishers evaluate the material? Everybody's heard the famous quote about laws and sausage. Nobody wants to watch either one being made. Well, there's a parallel here with deciding which books to publish. At the end of the day, much of it is subjective. So much of what publishers use is their own data points as to whether to sign a project. And as I said, these are subjective. Unfortunately, two people in the same company might independently look at the same project and draw different conclusions because of the subjective nature. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot is based on their intuition and those initial reactions with the author and the reviewers and the idea. Some projects are a cut and dry no, such as too small of market, the book proposal is not well written or defined enough, or the publisher already has competing books. Some projects are a no-brainer yes, boy are they fun, and that's likely due to the stature of the author or the gravity of the content in a developing field. But most likely, most projects fall somewhere in the middle and require somebody at the publisher to make a decision. Publishers will concentrate heavily initially on your query and your book proposal. The quality and comprehensiveness of your presentation with these two documents really, really matters. Spoon feed the publisher all the answers they need instead of asking them to go out and do research. Be your best advocate for your idea, for you. So in evaluating materials, each publisher will have an unwritten algorithm in their head for what they're looking for. Eventually, they're going to do a profit and loss analysis of a potential project. And what this is a financial document that shows what it'll cost to create the book, but more importantly, how many copies they're going to sell in various formats and in various ways and in various locations. That is subjective, but that's what they're charged with doing. This profit and loss statement will lead them to understand whether they should pursue the project. So in evaluating material, they're going to look at the author, the idea, and the markets. When they're looking at the author, they're going to say, how did the project come to the publisher? Was it solicited, or did the publisher know the author, or did it come over the transom unsolicited? Does the publisher have prior knowledge of the author? In reviewing the author's CV or body of work, are they a mover or shaker in their field? Does the author have a terminal degree? Do they have tenure? Does the author reviewer contacts know them or know of them? And what is their opinions of them? Is the author an experienced journal author, an experienced book author? Have they written on this topic before? Does the proposed author speak nationally? And what are those presentations about? Are they a member of national organizations? Now, I'm not trying to say publishers are only going to publish somebody with a terminal degree who has tenure, who the reviewers know and think well of and have spoken nationally. But these are part of the algorithm that a publishers will put together, these are some parts of the algorithm that the publisher will use to determine whether the author has the qualifications to move forward as the author of the project. Now, in regard to the idea, is the idea familiar to the publisher? Is it an evergreen topic of interest, or one that's an emerging area in that field? Both can be good or not. What's the future trajectory for this topic? Is it evolving? Is it growing? Is it static? So what's happening with this topic? Has the publisher published on this topic before, and was it successful? There's a chance they did publish on this topic, but that book didn't work out. It doesn't mean that yours won't. It may have been the project or the author, but what's been their experience so far with this topic? What is the competition like to this book or idea? They're going to look very closely at the competing or comparable books. They're going to look at the years they were published. They're going to look at how many editions that they were in, and they're going to try to decide as to how stiff or absent or plentiful the competition will be. This will be very important. Does your proposed idea complement other books in the publisher's line? That's very nice, because when there's a grouping of material, a critical mass of material, that's very helpful to the author when it comes to marketing and promotion. And they're going to look, can the concept be explained in a concise manner? If it takes 3 paragraphs to make the reader understand why they should care, this becomes an issue for the publisher and the marketing team. Now, when the publisher's evaluating the market, is it a primary market for the publisher? In other words, they're already strong in that area because this is a place that they have a presence. Or is it a growing area for them? Is the area as a whole stagnant or shrinking? Is it a silo? Is the area you're publishing in a silo? So what I mean by that, let's take medicine, for example. If you publish a book in ophthalmology or eye care, very few to no other medical professionals are going to care about ophthalmology. So you have to rely just on the ophthalmology market. Whereas if you publish in internal medicine or family medicine, many other medical professionals will be interested in your ideas, such as general practice, family practitioners, nurse practitioners, physician's assistant. So if your area is linked to other areas, that's good. And interdisciplinary, most times, can be good as well. What's the affluence of the customers or readers? I know we wish this wasn't the case, but we have to take into account the economic buying power for a textbook or for monographs of the individual buyer. So are they entry-level associate's degree students who may have scant resources, or are they in the second year of law school and I'm sure they have scant resources, but are more likely to spend on discretionary resources? If it's a textbook, what level is it used for? Is it for associates, baccalaureate, master's, doctoral, postdoctoral? Can the book be used at multiple levels, and what are those levels? Very important. If it's a textbook, would it be required or recommended for those classes? Very, very important. And then for the markets, is the market easy to reach? Where do the people gather? What do they currently read? What meetings do they attend? What websites do they visit? So if your market is easy to read, there's a lot of there's a lot of value to it because it's going to make marketing less of the challenge it usually is. And then in regard to marketing and promotion, will the author participate and to what degree? The publisher is trying to get an idea of whether you're talking a good game, but then are going to be shy or reticent when it comes to marketing. And what will the author's mix be? Will they be using social media, email blasts, meetings that they attend and speak at? Are they knowledgeable of search terms? So these three sets, the author, the author and the market, will come together to form what the publisher uses to evaluate their material. So what are some of the best practices when creating a query and a book proposal? Spend way too much time on it. That's all I have to say. I know it seems like it's only a few pages and people do it after the project's been fully envisioned or maybe even fully written, but these are some of the most important pages you're going to write. Share it with close friends and colleagues. Give them the permission to give you honest feedback and be open to that honest feedback. Many times people receive the feedback and then dismiss it. Oh, they don't understand what I was trying to do. Proofread it, check it, and proofread it again, and check it again. Remember to address what is your unique selling proposition? What makes your project different than everything else out there, which is an alternative? Does it add to the literature? Are you moving your profession forward with what you're proposing to do? Be blatant. Come out and say how you think your project will sell and how it'll be profitable to them by having a wide market and not being overly expensive to produce. Write and speak to the publisher in the publisher's language. This is the document to do it in, not in the book. The query and book proposal is about you sharing the information the publisher's needs and less about you explaining technical ideas inside this document. This is where you're speaking the publisher's talk. Give them the information they want, save them the work of doing research if you can provide some of it yourself. Be passionate. Commit to being that ideal marketing and promotional partner. However much it may not be in your wheelhouse, start to embrace that idea. I've done presentations on this before. If you'd like to know more about that, let me know and I'll direct you to the TAA presentations on these topics of an author promotional platform. So what are those dreaded red flags to avoid? First, don't create a dense jargon-filled book proposal. Remember, the person that's reviewing it is likely a business or editorial person and is not likely the profession that the book is for. So try to have a bridge to explain that to them while not making it watered down. Don't ignore marketing and promoting your book. Don't make a vain attempt and act like you're not sure you will do it. Please avoid typos and avoid it being poorly written. They are red flags. Don't send it to the publishers that don't publish in that area format. And I always use this TV or network analogy. If you're going to create a cooking show for TV, don't send it to ESPN. Now, not that ESPN might not do a cooking show, which Maybe they will, but they're unlikely to in my mind. Send it to the cooking channel or something like that. Many times authors will send the correct proposal to the incorrect publisher, and they'll get rejected, and they'll be sad that they were rejected, but it's because the publisher doesn't really publish those type books or in that area and doesn't specifically tell the author that. So really do your research as to where you send it. Don't be wishy-washy. Some authors come back and say, this is how I want to do it, but I can do it however you want me to. While that may seem attractive, publishers are looking for authors with a vision. They want you to be committed to what you're saying. Now, not that you're not open to new ideas, but don't start out by saying you can do however they want it. Please follow the publisher's preferred book proposal format. A red flag is when you're just sending a generic thing in and you haven't visited the publisher's website. Don't say my book has no competitors, it will revolutionize the area. This is true in a tiny fraction of the time. But remember, a competitor for this big idea you have is to not buy it at all. So you have plenty of competitors that would prevent people from buying the book. Please be realistic with what your book's going to do. Don't say readers and students and faculty don't know they need my book, but they will. It's tough to lead a revolution by trying to convince somebody to buy a $75 book. Don't say, I can't really tell you everything about my book until you show me a contract or some similar demand. Remember, the publisher can just say no, and all you're doing is sharing ideas at this stage. Don't be dug in. Don't say my book must be 1,000 pages, hardcover, color throughout, with a website and video. Now, you may want to publish a book like this, but be less dug in over the demands and say you're open to a discussion of what the market is served best by. More red flags. Don't say these type things. You'd be a fool not to publish my book. So I certainly like the enthusiasm and the confidence, but remember the publisher's got lots of alternatives, including just not publishing your book. Don't start out with apologies over the complexity of what you're trying to explain and say this book may not be right for you. Okay, well, maybe it's not. Don't say, market, everyone will buy this book. Once again, the hubris is admirable to a certain degree, but only a fraction of everybody in any single market ever buys a book. There's no 99% penetration, let alone 50% penetration, let alone 25% penetration for most areas. Don't say lots of publishers are interested in my book unless it's really, really, really true. So a publisher may say, oh, they're really shopping it around and I don't want to have to get in a competition with it, or they're just full of themselves and just pass. So if this is true, maybe you say it, but also maybe you hold that till after they make an offer. At the end of the day, assuming you avoid these red flags, publishers are looking for someone or a project that has a marketable idea that people want. This goes back to the publisher wanting to publish books that make money. They want it explained. The book proposal explained in a helpful and attractive fashion, something they can understand and wrap their heads around, and is well defined. They want authors that will work with the publisher, and they don't want somebody that's either blasé or adversarial. Who does? And be energetic and be creative over these many challenges that you have before you. So that is it. I'm interested to hear about your experience that you've had and how it might differ from this. And I understand that certainly might be the case. And I'm interested to hear your questions. Kim, I think we're going to turn towards question time. And if you have, if any don't get hit, please feel free to email me offline. I'm going to put my contact information up shortly. And also remember that a PDF of this is going to be posted. So before I go to questions, once again, thank you to TAA. So Kim, questions time.
Thank you, John. I see a question in the question box, and we'll start with that. But for those of you who did not receive the instruction on this earlier. There is a question panel on your control screen, on your screen, and you can type your question in that question box, and then I'll read it to John. So this first question is, what suggestions do you have for a tenured academic writing a biography?
Well, thank you for that question. That is interesting. I would want to know a little bit more about whether it helps explain the field and what's taken place in the field, and or whether it's simply about the person's life and trying to be a chronicler of that life. Many times biographies, I just read one in the past 2 months on Picasso, and it was very interesting. It really helped explain 20th century modern art by using Picasso. And I thought that that was very valuable because I'm interested in Picasso, but I'm really more interested in 20th century art. So I would like to know more if it's a vehicle to explain the area or simply about chronicling their life. Both have merit, but I think explaining the area may have greater value to a greater number of publishers. Whereas if you're chronicling the individual life, you probably have a more narrow focused group of publishers that might be interested. And a lot of this is all going to depend on what area we're talking about. So if we're talking about an extremely small area like occupational health nursing, which is a tiny area of medicine, it's probably going to have a limited market. Whereas if you're talking about business or literature or technology, you could really have some titans that might be examined for information. So I'm sorry, probably more information would help me with that. And once again, if that person wants to contact me offline for a further discussion, I'd love to have that.
All right, thanks, John. I'm actually seeing a question that just came in. I guess we can jump in since we have some extra time here. I was approached by a couple of publishers who want to publish a textbook, including a digital version, but require that I confirm and agree into the contract the number of students enrolled in my classes. I am hesitant to comply with such demands for obvious reasons. Sensitive university information is one of them. What do you think of such propositions?
Well, that is unique. I've not heard that before. Of all the authors and textbook or book ideas that I worked with, that was not a request I ever made of somebody. Unless it's a unique situation, the publishers should really be looking at the entire market, and the author's potential use in their classes or their university should be gravy. So I'm not sure why they would be fixated or concentrated on just the number of students in the author's program, if I heard it correctly. So I would simply ask that question. I would go back to the publisher and say, I have this information. I'm a little hesitant. Can you shine some light more on why this is of particular interest versus the entire market? So I would suggest you start there and then see what that conversation brings forward. Once again, after you get that information, or if there's something I'm missing, you can contact me offline, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Okay. Well, that is, I think, the last question. So thank you, John, for sharing your expertise with us, and thank you all for participating in today's presentation.
Well, thanks again, Kim. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy day, and please be safe.
All right. Have a great rest of your day, John.